There were some big misses, some unfortunate injuries, and one showtime stunner. The playoffs continue to entertain, and this quarterfinal second leg review show. Yeah, people, welcome back to JPL Fun. We now know our semi-final matchups, but before we get there, let's turn back time to what went down on Wednesday night, starting with defending champions taking on Firehouse. First, the lineup for Waterhouse. There was only one change from the first leg as defensive midfielder Alexander Bittnell made way for striker Javier Bryan, who moves up top to partner Neon Barrow. But the real big news was star striker Colorado Murray was fit enough to make the bench. As for Cavalier, they too also only made one change as Dwayne Allen returned to the squad in favor of the Haitian Shad San Milan. No, it was clear that Cavalier were in no mood to concede early this time around with their unique 3-4-3 system that looks more like a 3-2-2-2 that worked so well for them in the last match. And as such, they were playing with a lot more confidence with this audacious chip attempt from Ainsworth, a clear evidence of that confidence. Then an unfortunate moment occurred that would change the course of the match going forward. Waterhouse defender Shamari Dyer picked up an injury that forced their head coach Javier Einstein into making an early substitution. U20 international Dwayne Berger came on in his place and occupied the vacated spot at the right wing back position as Shamari Dallas had to slide back into defense. From here, overall, the game lacked any real fluidity, with Waterhouse themselves taking their time to form any sort of rhythm. This misguided free kick for Denard Thomas was the best he could muster in the opening 20 minutes. While down the other end, Cavalier approach was a lot different as they opted to use crossing variations to find their opener. On this occasion, it almost produced a lucky deflection that almost floated into the back of the net, but Roger Williams was awake to make sure that didn't happen. But Cavalier kept at this plan of attack, and in the 29th minute, it would pay a dividend. Donaldson with the delivery, and Dwayne Allen did well to get in between two Waterhouse players to get a head onto the ball and hit it towards goal. Williams would parry it, but Allen would follow up to hit it into the empty net. 1-0 Cavalier, and I find it interesting that Allen header came against Dallas, who probably would not have been there if Dyer was still on the pitch. From here, if you have been watching Cavalier exploits in the playoffs in the last couple of years, you know what was coming next. The Duncan Destroyers retreated into a mid to low block and dared Waterhouse to break them down if they could. And Firehouse indeed saw significantly more of the ball and probe around Cavalier's box for the next 20 minutes looking for a response. We had to wait all the way until deep into the first half injury time for Waterhouse to finally come close to scoring. From this long throw-in from Dwayne Berger, the ball eventually landed at Javier Bryan, whose snap shot brought out another big-time reaction save from Jamari Gordon, who deflected the shot onto the post to protect Cavalier's lead. And Waterhouse were determined to enter the halftime break on level terms, but this curling effort from Manny Leacock was close but not close enough to get them anything. At halftime, Waterhouse made two attacking substitutions as the creative winger Cardell Bembo and club leading goal scorer Colorado Murray came into the match, and as a result, they will start the second half on the front foot and even had an early shot on target. But despite this new attacking impetus, the cat and mouse game, which we saw for majority of the first half, continued as Cavalier was working hard to keep their defensive shield intact. And when few legs began to tire, Rudolph Speed freshened things up with the introduction of Jamai Dennis and San Milan to give the first line of defense new life. But Waterhouse were still chipping away at Cavalier's armor, and Javier Bryan's attempted cross here could have gone anywhere, including into the goal. But Waterhouse got a corner instead, and from that corner, a mad scrabble ensued in the 6-yard box as the men from Jerusalem was doing all they could do to get the ball over the line. Then, a move that still had me scratching my head, Waterhouse took out striker Neon Barrow for defensive midfielder Alexander Bittnell despite them looking for a goal, but Bittnell did have an immediate impact as he helped set up Javier Bryan for a look-at goal, but Cavalier defense did well once again. And speaking of Cavalier, they continue to tinker as well as they remove substitute Jamai Dennis for defender Michael Forbes to add more height to the back line, which meant that Kimberly Scott was now given license to lead the line, and it was almost a stroke of genius when he raced away with the ball here with Roger Williams stranded in no man's land. But despite the composure shown, the Money Cup champion could not find a shot on target. But clear warning shots to Waterhouse that Cavalier were prepared to take advantage of any space they leave behind. While down the other end, Waterhouse would produce their clearest opening yet, but Javier Bryan missed at the worst possible time. Scott would again be a nuisance a few moments later, this time drawing a foul in a dangerous spot. And with the angle towards goal being perfect for a left footer, it was always going to be one player to take it. An absolute stunner from Christopher Ainsworth to deflate Waterhouse hopes of a comeback and practically put Cavalier on the verge of another semi-finals, 2-0. Waterhouse were stunned of course, and they did try till the very end to find at least a consolation, but it would be the defending champions who will move on to the Final Four. So it was a well-executed performance from Cavalier, but what does the stats say? No surprise, Waterhouse dominated possession as that was the plan all along from Cavalier, and despite seeing less of the ball, the defending champions outshot their opponents 9-7. Javier Bryan's shot at the end of the first half was their only shot on target throughout the entire game, while Cavalier themselves had 5. But Waterhouse did produce majority of the dangerous attacks. I said it live on air and I will say it again here. The playoffs is all about the players stepping up as well as the coaching. I know some of you guys won't be happy to hear me say this, but Rudolph Speed and his technical staff were brilliant in this match. From minute 1 to minute 90, it was clear they had a well thought out approach to the match and executed it to near perfection. And I can already hear those snide remarks in the comment section stating that playing a low block is nothing special, but that's undermining the attacking talent Waterhouse does possess. And oh well, Cavalier set up to nullify that attack. Even the move to take out Dennis after he just came onto the pitch 10 minutes earlier took some guts, as the match scenario had changed at that point, as Waterhouse were now relying on aerial crosses into the box to Bryan and Murray, so Speed opted for the height of Michael Forbes to help in that scenario. And I will end this for praise for the players as well, because they worked tremendously hard as a unit to keep Waterhouse from creating any noteworthy chances. As for Waterhouse, it's a bit disappointing in the manner they are going home. I'd stated all along leading up to the playoffs that despite their attacking talent in this team, I was still cautious about the attack. There were also some questionable coaching moves during the match as well. Opting for Bittnell and not someone like Mario Sims or Martin Davis when you were desperate for a goal is still a head scratcher. But regardless, I still feel they had a good season, and if everything goes as planned in the off-season, they should be back much stronger next time. Anyway, the final result reads Waterhouse 0, Cavalier 2. Now we move on to the second game, where it was also all to play for between Portmore United and Racing United. First, the lineup for Portmore, head coach Rudolph Austin only made 2 changes as Ramon Howell comes in for Captain Single Knight and Marquez Reed replaced Dustin Cohen. As for Racing, well, Anthony Patrick was more willing to freshen things up with numerous changes as Roshane Myrie, Giovanni Cunningham and Tyrone Mullins all joined the fray. And just like what we saw in the first match with Cavalier, Racing were determined not to concede early this time around. In fact, you could argue that they settled first, as they would go on and produce the game's first real shot on target, as seen here by Bashko. Portmore, for their part, was slowly ramping up speed as they stuck with their first leg tactics of congesting the middle of the park with a 4-man diamond and giving freedom to right back Tyreek Zimenez to bomb forward whenever he could. But it would actually be the Stallions with the game's next big chance when Tyrone Mullins was played in on goal, but his snap shot sailed over the bar. 0-0 it remains. From here, Portmore was still doing well in possession, but hardly had any attempts on target for show for their efforts. But they would strike a bit of fear into the hearts of Racing fans during this attack when the clearance fell to Howell at the top of the box and the former more pleasant man, Blas, didn't miss the target too much. At this point, both teams were even as they jostled for dominance. However, it continued to be Racing to produce the better opportunities. This free header should have been on target. Fast forward a few minutes later and again there will be another free header in Portmore's box, but again it lacked direction. Portmore were hoping to punish their rivals for all these wasted chances, and they almost did exactly that in the 33rd minute when Peter McGregor called his own number. His shot only managed to graze the top of the crossbar and went out for safety. Close, but no cigar for the number 3 seed. The back and forth between the two Portmore-based clubs would continue. This time it would be Racing star man Nikai Ellis to uncork one on target from long range. But they would cancel each other out all the way up to half time, as that was the last major action before the end of the first half. Second half now, and patrons were begging for a goal to liven things up, and only 50 seconds into the half, Portmore would oblige. An absolute banger or a strike from distance by Tyreek Zimenez managed to fly all the way into the back of the net past Aaron Inel to give Portmore an early lead. 1-0, and I feel bad for Inel, who most likely saw it late after O'Day Nish failed attempt to head the ball away. In the first leg, Racing came all the way back from 3 goals down, so most likely they were still confident they could get back into this match, but they needed way more on this occasion. After this, Racing were struggling to produce clear-cut chances, and thus, coach Anthony Patrick went to his bench and brought on attackers Domorne Hutchinson and Kadeem Young to once again give them a boost in the attack. Unfortunately for them, those moves didn't help much as they still struggled in the final third. We had to wait all the way until the 68th minute for Racing to finally get a shot on target, and it didn't arrive from any nice build-up play. But Grant failed to beat Daniel Russell from close range. But they were still only losing by a single goal, which means that they remain in striking distance, and Portmore knew life for the remainder of the match would be a lot more comfortable if they managed to find a second goal. Substitute Jaheim Rose came the closest to making that wish come true with this shot that narrowly went wide. And while you could pat Rose on the back and tell him solid attempt, there's no way you could extend similar pleasantries to the next player that missed the target. Captain Knight had all the time in the world here to either pass or score, but in the end it was a horrible miss. Somehow it remained only 1-0. But they were still in control, and when head coach Relive Austin wanted to freshen things up, he opted for like substitutions, including bringing on Rashawn Small for Tarek Zimenez. And it later proved to be the right move, as Small would team up with his fellow substitute Javier Brown to finally produce Portmore second. 2-0, and Racing now had a mountain to climb. And that mountain really should have been taller when first leg hero Ronaldo Robinson raced away towards goal, but Aaron Inel is the Golden Gloves leader for a reason, and he did well to keep Racing's slight hopes alive. But there will be no heroic comeback this time around, as the final whistle would arrive not long after that, and Portmore United will be the ones to advance. So we finally had another Portmore derby victor after 7 attempts, but how was the game in terms of stats? Portmore edged possession with 51%, and they outshot Racing 30-7. 5 of those were on target for Portmore, while their rivals only managed 3, and Portmore led the way in dangerous attacks. So while I gave coaching a very high percentage of the reason for Cavalier's victory in the first match, this time around I simply believe the stronger team won. Racing tried to learn from their mistakes from the first leg, and for the most part they did, but once again they failed to have Ellis closer to goal for a substantial period of time and to provide Tajay Grant with enough service. But no one could take away the fact that they still had an amazing season, and their fans should still feel proud. As for Portmore, they too learned from their first leg mistakes. They didn't take their lead for granted this time around, and even smartly finished things off to make it comfortable in the end. I stated on air that Portmore is my dark horse to win it all, but no question, the real test will be in the semi-finals. Anyway, once again it ended, Portmore United 2, Racing United 0. So that's the quarterfinals done and dusted, but before we get out of here, let's look at the semi-final matchups. Cavalier's prize for best in Waterhouse is a match against second seed Montego Bay United at 5 PM, and Portmore will have some work to do against the number 1 seed Mount Pleasant, who finally get to join the action. But anyway guys, that is all for this latest review show. Thank you all for watching, and please like, subscribe and share as we look to keep you all up to date leading up to the final in May. Otherwise, for great JPL content, you're already at the right place. JPL fan. YouTube, big up yourself.